Good evening. We'll call this meeting, that's January 7th special meeting of the board to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up on the agenda, announcements and executive session report. Two items. An executive session was held on December 3rd, 2013 to discuss a personnel matter regarding the position of Interim Director of Pupil Services and litigation relative to the field project, the conditional use hearing before the Worcester Board of Supervisors. Another executive session was held on December 17th, 2013 to discuss legal matters relative to the field project, conditional use hearing before the Worcester Board of Supervisors. By way of attendance, all board members are present tonight. So next we will move into capital projects presentation. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the board members make their way to the seats here for the presentation. We'll be using the projector and the screen behind us.
Is this yours? I don't know who's that.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present the 5-year capital projects plan to both the board and the public. I do want to mention that this is our initial initial discussion this evening, and certainly I don't believe that this will be the last time we'll have some discussion about this, and certainly I want to make sure that as I mentioned early in my tenure, with trying to devise not only this 5-year plan, but also a 5-year budget projections, as well as looking at long-term planning for the Methacton School District. And the reason for that is to simply do one thing, to make us have better information, more information to make the best decisions possible. So I want you to know that in the last 2 months, Bill Jacoby, our facilities engineer, along with building principals, have been working passionately to document the needs of the district over the next 5 years. And we've identified nearly $5.25 million of wants and needs, and have available in this presentation only those items that are addressed, that are eligible under bond financing guidelines. So I want you to understand that although there were many requests and many thoughts put into this process, the items we're presenting here this evening are just those items that we know are worthy under the rules regarding bond financing. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is for 2 reasons. One, that we may consider as a board at some time in the future, or maybe in the near future, that bond financing might help us to accomplish some of these projects. And secondly, some of these projects may actually be considered as part of a pending interest in bond financing with the field project, which I'll be presenting a little later this evening. Again, this is not an inclusive list, but it is an initial discussion start. So if we look at the capital projects plan, there were 4 main purposes for this: to provide the board with possible major capital projects needed over the next 5 years to provide the board with information necessary to make critical decisions, to establish initial discussion and gain direction from the board, and most importantly, in my mind, is to start the dialogue around establishing a fiscally sustainable organization. So in order to do this, I thought the best way to start off today's presentation is to talk about where we've been and what we've done historically. And certainly we can go back a number of years, but if we look at the past 6 years using the 2008-2009 school year as a base year, we had approximately in our capital reserve fund about $4,400,000. And so over the next subsequent years, 2009, 2010, and so on, you'll see some of the capital reserve fund usage in the middle column, and then you'll also see the recurring balance that occurred. And you'll notice that on the double asterisk in 2010-11, there was a transfer from the general fund, that's what the GF stands for, of about $1.25 million to the capital reserve. That's why you see an increase in that year's balance. And the reason I'm sharing this with you because certainly you heard my number early. I said, you know, about $5.25 million, and certainly our balance has not come anywhere near that. So I wanted you to understand that over the past 5 years, we've been spending about $925,000 a year on capital projects. Certainly these are all, I would imagine these are all, I wasn't here, but I imagine these are all projects that were worthy of your approval and have helped the Methacton School District take care of its facilities and needs. But certainly, as I mentioned in my first slide, that we need to start having a dialogue around establishing a fiscally sustainable organization. And to do that, we need to, first of all, look at this history and then look at some of the projects that are on the table over the next 5 years. So we're not going to get into too much detail, but we're certainly going to talk building by building about a little bit about those items. So we'll start with the Arcola Intermediate School. If we look over the next 5 years, there are several projects that are outlined here. Some of those projects, including in 2014, are meaning the HVAC, we're talking about with the replacement of a chiller. We're talking about portable bleachers for mobile portable bleachers on the fields for the athletic fields on that campus. Other HVAC control upgrades in order to address the controls that currently are in place that are no longer supported. And we can take a look then at 2016-17. We're looking at other HVAC chiller changes, upgrading in the lighting system in the gymnasiums, and other basic needs related to the gyms, the floors, and other athletic areas. So over the next 5 years, some of the recommendations, not only from the building principals, but also from our maintenance department, we're looking at the Arcola campus of about $883,000. If we take a look at the Arrowhead building, you can see that the Arrowhead building has some of the same items, but these in 2015-16, there's a projected recommendation of a secure entrance. And I just want to talk to you what that means. The secure entrance really means an inner holding area to verify visitors as they enter into the building. Many of our other buildings have this type of capacity. However, the Arrowhead building does not. And we believe that for the safety of all of our students, that an investment in this type of a secure entrance will help improve our security measures within the buildings. So just imagine a kiosk of nature where there might be an individual, a secretary, sitting in there being able to do the verifications on the initial entryway before the visitor gets into the hallway area and can go left or right. So that gives you an idea. And then also, if you look at 2018-19, you can see that we're talking about, a substantial roof replacement. And let me just tell you a little bit about these costs. So when you talk about how these costs were derived, these costs, and similar to Arcola, and as I go through these slides, they were not derived by going out to get bids as of today, but they were based on the most recent costs that we've had associated with similar type projects. And so these are certainly estimates and informed estimates, not just guessed, but informed estimates that our maintenance department believes in general, like for example, the roof replacement. There's a $1 per square foot calculation. We know the size of the roof. We do the calculation. Could the cost be higher or lower based on a bid? Absolutely. I just want to give you an idea of that. If we look at Audubon Elementary, we can see that there's a replacement in the boiler room. Again, in other years, HVAC controls, some curbing and sidewalks, and repaving the parking lot. I believe that takes care of the Audubon campus, which would be about a total of $285,000. If we look at Eagleville Elementary, we're looking at the hot water replacement system there, some lighting upgrades in the building and in the gymnasium. Again, here in 2016-17, like in Arrowhead, we're looking at putting in the secure entrance there as well, for a total of $218,000 over a 5-year period. If you look at the Farina Center, that's our administrative building. Basically, there's some HVAC control upgrades, roof replacement on the docket, as well as a boiler replacement 5 years out for approximately $250,000. We take a look at the high school. In general, the high school is looking at the potential of repaving some of the parking area, the continuation of the floor replacement from carpet to a hardened vinyl replacement, again, lighting upgrades primarily in the gymnasium. Again, you look at some additional paving in 2016-17, and then looking at the auditorium and the gym roof in 2017-18 for a total of $655,000 over 5 years. Skyview, being our most recently built building, basically this is a project that's probably been before you in the past, but we would recommend at some point that we revisit the campus sign on that campus to help traffic flow and recognize that building on that campus. Woodland, again, one of the more recent renovated elementary buildings, potentially in 17-18, looking at some curbing and sidewalk issues to help with around the playground area of about $15,000. And Worcester, last of the buildings on our list this evening, a secure entrance there for Worcester, some lighting upgrades, controls, and updates to the HVAC controls in 2017-18 for approximately $239,000. So when we take a look at the 5-year capital perspective, you can see in the far left-hand column, we're looking at the fiscal year, and I generally tried to abbreviate the buildings in order to fit on this screen. So AR stands for, I have 2 ARs. One's Arcola. Yeah, I apologize for that. Yeah, so we got Arcola, then we have Arrowhead, Audubon, Eagleville. And you can see those perspectives. So if you look at, for the 2014-15 school year, we're looking at approximately $733,000. And then in the column that says capital reserve, you can see that based on the projects that were still on the docket for this school year, going into next school year, we would have about $843,000 remaining. And you can see where the deficit starts in the 2015-16 school year if we do nothing different than try to take care of these projects through the capital reserve and not replenish those funds or have any other funding initiatives. So if we look a little bit further, we look at a funding strategy, and I want to thank Stuart Whiteletter, our business manager, for basically spending a significant amount of time going and working with me on these particular funding strategies. I'm going to bring him up in just a few minutes to talk about performance contracting, but I also will be talking to you a little about our overall strategy. It's not just one thing that we can do that's going to help us through the process and become a fiscally sustainable organization, at the same time taking care of some of these projects that we feel are necessary. But through the bond of the field project, through the building in the projects into the budget, to sparingly utilizing the capital reserve, to looking at some alternative revenue resources and fundraising, and then looking at the surplus sharing over time with the fund balance. Those are some funding strategies that I want to talk to you in a little bit more detail. So I'd like Stuart to come up and start the dialogue about performance contracting.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Just wanted to give you a little bit of insight as to what performance contracting is all about. Basically, the Pennsylvania Department of Education allows school districts to utilize a program which basically entails paying for capital upgrades to your building based on savings generated by doing energy enhancements. Just as your air conditioning is starting to fail and your energy efficiency of that unit is not working as well as, say, a brand new unit, your energy savings associated with putting that new unit in can be used to pay for the upgrade to that air conditioning, as an example. What this slide does for you is just give you a snapshot overview of how this program works. Basically, what it is energy service companies, which are referred to as ESCOs, are essentially approved by the Department of Education to provide these services. So there's like an approved vendor list that's available that the school district can basically solicit to perform what is called an energy audit. These ESCOs will come out to Methacton School District. They will go around to all of our facilities and basically test our equipment. How is it operating? Is it working the most energy efficient way possible? If not, there is opportunity there for the school district to upgrade that equipment, as well as not entail any additional cost. So basically, the ESCO at the end of this process, as the last sentence in that how it works section, the awarded ESCO will provide a written guarantee to the district that the energy savings will pay for the project. So that's a really key part of this performance contracting, is there's no additional capital outlay from the school district. It's all pay from energy savings. The typical projects that are completed with these ESCOs are lighting upgrades, HVAC. As you heard, Dr. Zerbe referred to HVAC often throughout the buildings, controls, mechanical equipment, boilers, controls. All of those items are very common to be included in these ESCO projects. And certainly it's one of these opportunities for us to upgrade a lot of our equipment without any cost outlay on our part. And the really beneficial part of these ESCO contracts is you have a 15-year payback period. So basically what you're doing is you're essentially taking out, in essence, a loan which you're paying back through the energy savings over the 15 years. So it's a great program, a lot of opportunities for us to address a lot of our capital needs throughout the district. And, certainly something for us to look at as we explore the other options, as Dr. Zerbe referred to, outside of simply using our in-house funds to pay for some of these projects.
Thank you, Stuart. So the next part of the funding strategy would be to use, when we start talking about the field project, there was a presentation done on December 3rd from our bond financing company centered around about a $5.5 million bond for the field project. The concept behind that is really to do several things. Number one, to make the commitment to get the field project completed, but possibly with the help of other alternative resources, capital campaign, fundraising, things of that nature, we're going to be able to add some of these projects as listed here onto that particular bond in the instance that we raise $500,000, we raise $1 million, or we get to the point where in our current litigation with Worcester Township on the conditional use, we may choose to do something, wait until the light approval is granted. So we may be able to offset some money and put some money aside to take care of some of these other projects if, for example, the bids come in lower than we might expect, and certainly use this as one additional option as part of reaching the needs that we've identified. In addition to that, I've combined the two other items within the funding strategy to talk about budgeting for the capital projects as well as sparingly using the capital reserve plan. So in general, I can recommend that over the next 5 years we look at increasing proportionally the budget allocation within the budget, the general fund budget, to take care of some of these expenses. So for next year we would recommend $100,000 and try to budget $200,000 the following year and so on, while only tapping the capital reserve at about $100,000 each in order to make some of those projects a reality, and at the same time looking at the amount of capital reserve being hit minimally. Another part of the funding strategy is certainly to establish a vision for the future of the Methacton School District, and I plan on doing that as part of my entry plan into the district. This will certainly be a part of setting a future long-term perpetual funding, giving opportunities for all. And I think it's additionally important for everyone to recognize that, we're at a unique point in time where we can create an atmosphere of community and an opportunity for a lot of different community members that could become a part of a game-changing initiative. And I think that's an important part of this overall process. And lastly, a part of the funding strategy, I want to share with you that it would be basically an administrative recommendation to create an understanding regarding the overall budget and the future outlook, to establish some core practice of splitting the surplus between. So for example, at the end of the year, if we have $100,000 or whatever we might have at the end, instead of putting it directly and only into the fund balance, which is currently at about 5%, and the recommendation is to be at 8%, we split that balance to help both of those funds, the capital reserve and the fund balance, over time to get it to an 8% and a capital reserve at 3%. So this is, again, these funding strategies are again designed to obtain a reasonable level of sustainability for our financial future. And if we talk about moving forward, really this evening, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is an initial look, and it's about discussion and about making good decisions and about getting information. So we need to work with the property committee to define the details of each project and establish a prioritization and get them on a schedule that makes sense in the context of defining the projects best suited to be funded under the available funding means. And certainly it's my job to make sure that we keep the board updated with the recommendations of that property committee. So at this point, we certainly can take some questions from the board if they're so inclined to ask some, or my second presentation as part of this evening is about the field project, and we would ask that if there are no questions, we would move into the field project presentation while you're in the seats that you're in. But again, are there questions related to the capital funding project as it stands right now? Ms. Woodring?
Yeah, I think I heard you say at the beginning that this would be very fluid. Is that correct? That it's a fluid sort of plan?
Well, I think I didn't use the word fluid, but what I meant was if it's an initial start, and can it be changed? I mean, when we talk about certain projects being allocated for certain years, it's based on maybe the warranty of the roof. It might be based on certain things that are concrete. But there might be other items. So, for example, the HVAC controls. We know that some of the controls are outdated and they're no longer supported, and so getting the replacements are going to be could be an issue. So we need to make a determination whether we want to get them and when in the cycle of 5 years or longer that we need to put them in there. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, some discussion as well, that allows us to better prioritize what are the things based on the available resources we have to take care of first. So we got to prioritize the list, then we need to put it into the schedule appropriately to meet the funding mechanisms available to us. So for example, priority, we may say that there's certain things that warrant us to put them onto, even though we might put, say, 20 items onto the $5.5 million bond for the field, in hope that there might be some money left there to take care of those things. We may say in a priority level that these are the things most worthy of being funded under that type of a funding mechanism, and these other projects are more apt, or we feel more comfortable using them in a budget for and sparingly capital reserve process. So that's so can it be worked differently than it's presented here this evening? Absolutely. This is our initial discussion, and I think there's some significant work that we need to move forward on with this.
I guess I was just trying to get a sense of how often you would see or you would project it being visited. Would it be quarterly? Would it be annually? Would it monthly?
I believe right now this is a document that is a starting point for getting things appropriated for the 14-15 budget as well. So when we start talking about where we're going to be in our financial future, we need to take into account continuously the projects that are on the table, the presentation that will be coming to you on the 21st and 28th, the budget and the 5-year budget projections, and use that information over time as we get to the point in June to adopt the final budget for the 14-15 school year. So I would imagine that this document, as it evolves, will play an important role in all of our decisions as we put that financial package all together. So it is important to us, and will it change? I imagine it will, based on how we prioritize and where our resources are going to come from. Yes.
How does this fit with the strategic plan that the district is currently following? And I know you're talking about, at the same time, doing a long-term operating budget. And how do all those fit together?
Those are two good questions. One, we're currently in the process of starting a new comprehensive plan, which is formally titled the strategic plan, but the state now calls it the comprehensive plan. So our plan is, we're in phase 3 of the state's level of planning under the comprehensive plan. So we're in the process of getting that started. So you'll see possibly in the near future some additional recommendations from me to get that ball rolling. Does it fit into the existing strategic plan? I can tell you that I've not conferred those items to the plan, because we're looking forward to working a new plan. This is a new future, new superintendent. We're moving forward with the new information as we gather it. But certainly, the second part of your question, it's going to play a significant role in our 5-year projections, because depending on what projects we feel we need to get done and in what years, it's going to impact the amount of money that we're going to be able to put aside to budget for some of these projects within the budget, or if we decide to, and how we decide to finance them otherwise. So it's a significant portion of our consideration long-term. Any other questions? Mr. O'Neill?
Comment. I'd like to have you interaction with something a couple of years out. I'm not sure honestly focus, but I would like to see, because all these finances are paid for taxes, I would like to see the minimization of the tax impact of each of the cumulative effect of each of the purchases over time. Because assuming you had a balanced budget on the operating side, all these would be implemented. And we could be honest, what is that tax impact per year?
I'm sorry?
I don't know, it might not be exactly apples to apples, lines like each part is going to be percent of the tax, because some of it might come from the general budget that should be everybody.
I guess the assumption that is a balanced budget, which we're going to work this issue.
I mean, let me work with Stuart to find out what type of information we can provide to you related to that question. But I think in the end, you know, there's an impact fee. When I say impact, I mean there's an impact on these items and how important they are for the operation of the district. And some of these items are going to be, you know, there's going to be, you're going to have less of a choice in order to do them. Other things that may need to get done. And in some other instances, they're going to be things that you have decisions to make, whether or not you do them now or you forego their cost into the future. And so they may or may not hit tax-wise into our current 5-year plan, or and that's why we'll try to get you as much information as possible related to that question.
Out of curiosity, we have 3 schools with secure entrance at different time. There some schools are very risk, or
I think, you know, they're all about 175,000 possibly, and so when we sat down to think about how these were best played out, we also looked at strategizing where we could fund things in what years. I mean, we can't give you a recommendation of $4 million in 1 year. So we may decide as a board to change that priority and put all of them right at the top, because safety is you know, a significant concern of ours. Certainly we have controls in place today that deal with that. So I'm confident that our building administration and our staff are dealing with it appropriately. However, I'm talking about increasing our ability to be safe, and not necessarily, you know, concerned about how the safety is today. So can some of those things be put off? I think, you know, we can study that to some greater detail and get the input from the principals directly and whether or not the things should be put off into the future. But I think it also allows us, you know, to be more efficient with the process, and it helps us in time with our volunteers. So when volunteers come into the building, when they're going through the secure entranceway, it's much faster for them to get in and out because they can be taken care of, and there's a person right there to do it. Otherwise, they have to come into the office and they're dealing with the entire ebb and flow of the office, you know, with students there as well. So I think it's not only an efficiency, but possibly a safety item. Joyce?
I'm really very glad to see that we're actually starting to talk about alternative resources for funds. And this audit, I think, is a very good start. Is there any other alternative resources on the horizon that we might want to look into or are considering?
Well, I think the board has in front of them I mentioned it earlier, a game-changing opportunity here. I think that the opportunity is built around the excitement that I'll be presenting to you a little bit in a few minutes regarding the field project. But the whole concept and the dialogue about a capital campaign, I believe that, and it's my hope that I'm able to come to you in the very near future with a vision for the future of Methacton School District that not only includes the excitement centered around this high school campus field, but also a vision that takes us academically to a new level, the new heights, as well as takes a sincere interest in the arts and music programs in the Methacton School District and every other avenue that allows us to have the dialogue necessary to get interested partners in the community, whether it's businesses, individuals, groups, to help to be long-term contributors to the Methacton School District, aside from what they may already do in regards to their contributions through taxes. So I think we have a great opportunity to not only look at the capital campaign related to the fields, but also to impact some of these other programs. So many of these things that I mentioned here, some of them involve athletics, some of them involve the stage lighting at Arcola. That's one of the items on here. That's something that, an interested donor in the music programs or the play or something of that nature can, make a substantial contribution to offset those costs and have, a fabulous light setup for those students. So yes, those are some serious things that we need to put into place.
I also want to ask about the energy audit. It was brought up at a meeting a few meetings back, maybe, that Skyview and Woodland is spent significant amount of money in energy efficiency.
Geothermal, yes.
As well as the lighting. Have we determined the return on that money yet?
We plan to present that information on the 21st at our regular work session. If there are no other questions, I'd like to proceed on to the field project, if I may. Okay? So we're just moving the agenda a little bit, and we're going to move on to the field project. Angela, if you'd help me out there. Thank you.
Yep.
Again, this evening, the Methacton High School Campus Field Project. Before I start, I just want to, give you a piece of information that I think is important as we go through these discussions. Again, this evening we're looking to find the costs relative to the Methacton High School Campus Field Project. I encourage the board to ask questions as they see fit, but I recommend that that is not proper at this time to ask specific questions related to cost. In the instance that we may have vendors listening to our presentation this evening, and that type of discussion is certainly appropriate at a later date when the decision about cost are collected and provided to the board. But again, it is my goal this evening to seek that data on cost. And before I go much further, I also have with me from Architera, David Horn will be helping me with this presentation this evening. So if we look at this evening's presentation, we're going to talk about four major pieces of information. We're going to look at the project timeline. We're going to take a short run back through some historical information, some historical dates, and just to make sure that both the board and the public are familiar with where we've been and how we've gotten to this point in time. Secondly, we're going to talk about the bid summarization. David Horn's going to share some graphics with you and point out some items and certainly give you an opportunity to ask questions as you see fit. Third, we're going to talk about project funding and a capital campaign. And certainly, last but not least, we're going to talk about the project timeline moving forward. So when we talk about the historical timeline, and I'm going to say this hopefully for the last time, as the newbie to the Methacton School District, it's my understanding that in some rendition or another, over the last 20 years, there's been discussion about lights, fields, things of that nature that have been before this board or previous boards or as part of administrative dialogue or you name it. So I just want you to understand that the dates that I have here are dates that are more recent times, but certainly it's not all-inclusive. So if we talk about October 21st, 2008, it's my understanding that there was an athletic feasibility study presented to the board. At the time, the superintendent, had a feasibility study conducted and it was presented. In that study, it moved on to some additional discussions with the board of the athletic fields prepared by the administration, provided to the board with some preliminary cost and some options. In October 18th of 2011, the athletic director and coaches presented athletic improvements to the board. And primarily in this discussion, there was a list of initial concerns related to the playability of those fields, the image that those fields had on the families and the students as they played on those fields compared to their competitors in the leagues that they were in, as well as the safety related to those fields. October 25th, 2011. It's important to know that the board approves a field and light improvement project and to begin the process to select an architect. On November 22nd, 2011, the board approves Architera, who's here with us this evening, as the architect. And I can't tell you how, at least in my experience, I've been in several building projects in my former employment. I can tell you that David Horn has been very informative. He's spent some significant time getting me up to speed on this project, and I just want the board to understand that and want you to know that I appreciate the time that he's and education that he's provided me to get me to the point where I'm at today. We then look at February 28th, 2012. Architera makes the first public presentation to the board, initial core concept drawing. We move on to the timeline, May 15th, 2013. Here's another significant date. A core concept K is presented and is determined to be the most favorable field drawing. Then between May and June 2013, drawing K underwent modifications in order to meet regulatory, playability, and safety requirements. Basically what that means is as we were going through the process for approvals with the township, with the county, there were certain requirements needed to be made and architectural changes and things related to water runoff and stormwater management. On November 25th, I'm now on board with the Methacton School District. The administration met with Architera to provide a final review of the bid documents. On December 5th, 2013, the Athletic Advisory Committee met with the district administration and Architera to provide a final review in preparation for the bid documents. Primarily, that meeting on December 5th was designed specifically to make sure that committee was able to review all the details related to the project to make sure that we were asking for the things that were necessary in order to meet the safety and playability requirements needed for those sports impacted. And lastly but not least, there was a significant presentation done by Dr. Miller on July 16, 2013 that certainly went through many of these same historical timelines. So I just want to make mention to that. Again, I just want to again, caution the board that at this moment in time, I'm going to turn it over to David Horn. He's going to have some significant information to provide to you in the next 3 slides related to the campus as it exists today, the campus as it would exist with the base bid, and the campus as it would exist with the base bid plus the varying alternates. And certainly then at that point, David, if it was okay with you, we can then open it up for questions from the board. Do you want me to forward to the slide?
Yes, please.
Okay. Go.
Okay, good evening. Good to be here again. I think I was here last in July speaking with you. I want to share with you 3 images tonight, an existing conditions plan, which you're looking at right now, and ultimately a suggested base bid type of plan, and then finally a graphic that demonstrates a number of potential bid alternates, all designed to provide maximum flexibility and highest value, no matter what alternates or permutations of combinations of alternates you may want to select after the bidding process were to be concluded. 25 months ago, when we were brought in to begin the continuation of work that previous consultants had initiated, we inherited some developmental premises that identified a budget, identified through the previous consultants 2 synthetic turf fields, identified some track and field enhancements, but nothing on the actual running track oval in terms of the scope, and a scoreboard replacement, 2 D areas, which are areas, if you may recall from some of my previous meetings with you, a D area is the area between the goalposts and the running track. It's kind of shaped like a D, whether it's an inverted D or a real D. Those were the basic premises we inherited. And then through the next 25 months, bringing us up to date, we had to restructure the project based upon a number of influences received. Influences we received from your athletic department as a refinement to current needs and thinking. Influences received from the school district administration. Influences we received from township administrators. And some influences and input we received from the general public or community at large through some of our preliminary planning workshops that were conducted a number of months ago. And this redefined the potential project. And as we noted all along, it is our goal to create the most efficient and value-driven strategy for bidding this project, which creates the most flexibility for you in deciding how to spend any given amount of designated dollars for this project, whether it be the budget amount, something less than the budget amount, or something potentially more than the budget amount. So in developing that strategy, we're at a point where, as you know, we're involved in some conditional use hearings on field lighting issues with the township. They are ongoing. We are at a point where we're perhaps 90% of the way through county planning review and approval process, 90% of the way through township planning board review and approval. As a matter of fact, we have a preliminary final approval conditionally already received just in the last 3 or 4 weeks from the township for this project. And we're also, I would say, 90% of the way from receiving our NPDES permit which is an erosion and sedimentation control, earth moving type of permit from County Soil Conservation. So we're very close in receiving all the permits. That has allowed us to develop a level of construction detailing, both plan view. At this point, we're in excess of 60 different sheets of drawings for this project, as well as written technical specifications on how to construct and publicly bid the project. And we're into 3 different books and volumes totaling about 6 inches worth of paper. So we're on the precipice of being able to go out to bid with such a strategy, if you're so inclined. And I want to walk you through how we think the best strategy for putting this project out to bid to get real numbers. You've seen some of our estimated numbers through memorandums and whatnot that we shared with you. But to give you, to put you in the best position to receive bids, see real numbers, real qualifications of contractors with experience specializing in this type of work, to render a decision then whether or not you want to move forward with constructing some aspect of the project. So the next slide is entitled Site Plan Bid Components Base Bid. And we tried to highlight areas on your campus that would be our recommendation on an initial base bid core project. And it's a project that is well under the designated project budget. And it includes the installation of campus-wide stormwater management systems. This is a request and requirement of the township to pick up some stormwater management issues that have been affiliated with the campus over the last couple of decades. And we are now going to address those concerns that other projects, previous projects, weren't required to address, but now, under new regulations, are being requested that we do address. So that includes the development of a stormwater management basin with 4 bays, and really turning that into an environmental education area as well, due to the rain garden aspects and some of the earth science opportunities that are available there, but also doing other types of stormwater enhancements that are not necessarily field-related, but campus-related, in collecting and managing water in a more efficient way for less impact upon the neighbors and less impact upon the immediate campus environment. It also will help to, through some phytoremediation, purify the waters coming off of some of the parking areas and bus parking areas, so that they're leaving the site cleaner and under better control. And all in a manner that is recognized as best management practices now in effect and under regulation by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We would also convert the stadium field in the base bid to a synthetic turf field. And there you can see that aspect of it. It would be a synthetic turf field that would allow for multiple sports to be played upon it, and would be a 2 1/4 inch high turf infilled with 60% rubber, 40% sand. Would probably be one of 4 dual fiber systems that we intend to specify, which reduces fly out of particles within the turf and creates a very safe and long-lasting athletic surface. We would construct 1 restroom building right there under the base bid. Currently, spectators visiting the stadium during an event utilize some restrooms inside this high school building for their restroom needs. By current code, the number of restroom units available is deficient. What we would do with this new base bid building, this building in conjunction with the restrooms you are now offering inside the building, brings you up to code compliance for restroom needs on a public venue such as this. We would also add new track and field facilities, not necessarily in the form of 2 new D areas as was suggested by a previous consultant 25 months ago, but through working with the athletic department, it would be 1 new D here, a new discus launch here, 2 horizontal jump runways with sand pits here, a pole vault runway that is new, a javelin runway that is new, 2 shot put areas that are new. All of this added to the facility, plus a practice discus area here as well, all under the base bid. We would also retop the existing running track oval. And by retop, I mean we would apply a 2 to 3 millimeter spray applique upon the existing track surface, which freshens the surface, adds new life to the surface, to the tune of another minimally 8 years of life to that surface. And then, of course, repaint all the graphics on the track as well. And finally, we would add new stadium perimeter fencing around the outer perimeter of the active part of the stadium. Now, that sounds like a small project in a way, but it's a basic core project upon which we want to introduce add alternates or deduct alternates to build upon your facility and give you the maximum flexibility of cost-effective add-ons or deduct froms to get to more amenities should you want them. The next slide demonstrates how we would potentially get there. Let's talk about bid alternates at the stadium site. And it doesn't mean you have to take all these. These can be taken individually. And quite frankly, when it comes to lighting, you have 3 or 4 options per facility that, depending upon where the conditional use hearing may be, by the time you may be in a position to award this project in early March of this year, you can pick or choose which scenario you may want to implement. But let's go down these one by one, and they're not in any given priority. At the stadium site, we could add a second restroom structure, and there it is. Here's the first one in the base bid. We could add a second one right there. Why add a second one? Well, the base bid restroom and the alternate bid restroom together add up to the total number of restroom units you need under code, and you could then at that point close off spectators from coming into the school and using those restroom facilities and trying to control the public inside your school during a stadium event. We could, to save money to afford some of these other items, depending on your budget and needs and priorities, we could downgrade the new track surface. Not the oval, that would be a spray top. But when I say new, what's new is the D area, the runways here, the surface on the new Javelin launch. Instead of a sandwich system polyurethane, which is the higher end for high school, we could go with A lesser quality, still warranted for 5 years, will probably last double that time before you need to do something minimally to it, and that would be a structural spray. So it's there as an option, not necessarily advocating any of these, but we're trying to give you as much flexibility in options and bids to strategize, once you see real numbers, what your ultimate built project could be. We could eliminate the retopping of the existing track. 26 months ago, the previous consultant identified doing nothing to your running track oval. We're back to that under this scenario. Other than freshen up the paint, we'd repaint the lines and numbers on the track. I'm sure this is not a popular alternate in the athletic department, but it is one that picks up where a previous consultant was 26 months ago. So we had to at least show it. And I know we shared with you some approximate value of that under other correspondence. When we get to field lighting, the stadium field, you have three choices. And it's because of trying to capture, well, you have four. One is not to light the field. One is to illuminate the field. Another is to light the field, but leave the actual lighting equipment out of the bid. And under this scenario, you would procure the actual lighting fixtures, pole, foundation, and lighting control under a state contract. And then the other one is just to put an empty conduit to the lighting location so that in the future, at least the conduit's there to pull wire. You don't have to do extensive excavating if you were to add field lighting in the future. Some of this, of course, is geared to wherever the conditional use hearings may be by early March or first half of March. But we wanted to give you the maximum flexibility, knowing what we may know at that time in taking the temperature of the conditional use hearing, so that we could pick one of these options based on that, as well as based on your overall budget. Similarly, we have two choices on sound reinforcement system. One is to add sound reinforcement to the stadium with poles, and another is to add sound reinforcement without poles. You say, well, why are you doing that? Well, we're doing that because if you're going to accept a bid alternate that adds field lighting, we would hook the sound amplification or reinforcement system to the field lighting poles. If you accept a bid alternate that does not include or simply don't add field lighting, but want to add field amplification, then we need a pole of lesser size and scale to support the speakers. So that's the gist of those two alternates. Eliminate end zone graphics on the field. The warriors would be in large white letters, black outline in one end zone of the stadium field, and Methacton would be in the other end zone. And of course, if you were to not do that and just have it plain synthetic turf without the two logos, you would in fact experience some savings there. Add ball control netting. That's a request that came from athletics, where we would put in sleeves that would be below grade to receive temporary aluminum poles that seasonally you would put in. Usually, for example, Upper Perk, we did this identical system at Upper Perkiomen School District, where in the springtime, while track and field is using the facility, There may be an athletic sport, perhaps lacrosse, using the field, and there's a 20-foot netting system that is put in the springtime with 10-foot high up the sideline, up to a point just past the goal crease for lacrosse. This takes errant shots from lacrosse, which could be a high-speed ball, and being captured by the net instead of going beyond the field onto the track and jeopardizing the safety of someone using the track. So at both ends of the stadium field, we have designed, as an alternate, a ball control netting system. Similarly, at the pole vault venue, there's two types of uprights for pole vault, those that are portable, those that are permanently affixed but still movable, but within a few feet, permanently anchored. And as an ad alternate, the athletic department asked us to specify pole vault upright supports at the pole vault area. Very minimal cost for this alternate, but nonetheless, we're adding it as an alternate bid. And then finally, in the same vicinity where we have the two landing pits for the horizontal jumps in sand, there is an alternative where we would specify a prefabricated pit that would go in as one unit, have a sand catcher system with it, and then a cover that can go over the sand. And we were asked by the athletic department to specify two prefab pits, two sand catcher systems, and one cover for the horizontal jump pit, not two, because the thought was they would always be using at least one of the pits. So we spec one cover. So it gives you a variety of options on the stadium field. And in all, there's about 22 different alternates that we're going to apply to this project. I just went through the list on the stadium field. What I'm going to do now is go down a similar list, a little quicker, for the auxiliary and softball fields. Right now, as you know, the two softball fields exist here and here. This was actually the best location for the second synthetic turf field from a number of variables we explored. But by putting the auxiliary synthetic turf field here, it meant we also had to build two new softball fields. So you can't build just a synthetic turf field and not do the two softball fields. You have to, these are now in tandem because we're displacing two fields, and that means we have to relocate and reconstruct here. So the first bid alternative is this one right here, auxiliary field and softball fields. And it's a big ticket item, but it would add that second synthetic turf field, and it would add two new softball fields. This one being the designated varsity new field, this one being designated the junior varsity softball field. Our second bid alternate affiliated with this area would be, again, in no particular order or priority, eliminate softball field fences and warning track. During my last presentation with you in July, actually it was a school board member who had asked, and I don't know if suggest is the right word, but brought up the point, you know, if we didn't have the warning track and a permanent outfield fence for both softball, but just have it grass, we could fit another overlay athletic field in that area. And as an alternate, we're going to get a price for it, just to see what's involved in that. We've already done an alternative grading solution, and have in fact left this as one option that could be considered. Another one is add non-field lighting electrical service and components. Okay, this alternate does not include field lighting. by building these two. Field lighting would be a separate, as we'll see later, add alternate. But there are electrical needs down on the auxiliary field and down on the two softball fields that don't involve athletic field lighting. In other words, electrical receptacles to plug in pitching machines or other types of things. And it is the non-athletic field lighting components to these two fields that by adding this would include that. Then the next three deal with field lighting to just the auxiliary field, similar to the way we could add field lighting to just the stadium field. So depending on the bid amounts, you may end up at this point in time lighting both fields, lighting one field, putting an empty conduit for another. We're trying to give you, once again, maximum options at the best value we can possibly strive to achieve. So we have the field lighting to the auxiliary field lighting to the auxiliary field, but leaving the actual lighting system out for a separate acquisition. Add field lighting, empty conduit only. Similarly, the sound system with their own poles or with utilization of field lighting poles is covered there. Ball control netting. Now, at the auxiliary field, the ball control netting would be in conjunction with the perimeter fencing. That is to say, the perimeter fencing's in the base bid. But we want to have some netting that extends above the perimeter fencing, which is 8 foot high. Behind, we would go with netting that extends from a height of 7 feet to a maximum height of 20 feet, so that there's a 1 foot overlap of fencing and netting. And then on part of the sideline, again, up to the level of where the goal crease is for lacrosse, we would be 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet. Okay? That's all as an alternate. There was a request to add a flagpole in this general area that could be appreciated by both softball use, auxiliary field use, and potentially use on this field. So it would be centrally located in here. That's as an add alternate. And then we had a request to eliminate 2 modular dugouts at the varsity softball. Right now we're calling for 2 team shelters at JV and 2 team modular dugout structures at varsity. And athletics had asked us, who knows, we might get a separate donor, much like perhaps baseball did, to build some softball dugouts, or perhaps a student group under supervision may build the 2 softball dugouts. So just to give us maximum flexibility with regard to the softball dugouts, let's have an alternate bid that breaks that out separately. That way we know what it's worth in the event someone else steps up to the plate willing to do that. So we've done that as well. So all in all, the project can evolve to 2 synthetic fields with lights, 2 softball fields, campus-wide stormwater management. The things in the base bid, particularly campus-wide stormwater management, and at least turfing a field and enhancing track and field and enhancing spectator comfort, or at least getting you up to code on spectator comfort, are things in the base bid. Everything else is up for grabs. Let's get real numbers if you're inclined to put it out to public bid. And then sometime in the latter part of February, when bids could be due, we'll sit down and analyze it all with you and decide how to proceed. Okay. Are there any questions before I turn it over to Dr. Zerbe? Yes?
One question. The presentation was perfect. The stormwater management, what is it going to look like? Is this underground? Is this a basin that we're going to see with things around it? What do you
Yeah, that's a good question. This area We are doing some minor field-related stormwater management underneath the fields, out of sight, out of mind. But it ultimately ends up here, from this field, here, from this field, here, and from the campus, here, and then here. And what this will, first of all, there is an existing basin here. You may or may not be aware of it, but it exists. It's grass for the most part. But we're refurbishing it, and we are creating a new basin here, still allowing for baseball JV use and a full regulation athletic field use. We're not impacting those uses on this lower terrace with the development of this stormwater management. What will it look like? It'll look like a stormwater detention basin, but it'll be the nicest looking one because as landscape architects, we've also added buffering and considerable landscaping around it and in it. And that, when I said it could be an earth science teaching experience on rain garden and that type of ecology and hydrology, I wasn't kidding. It could be a real learning tool. You will not have to mow any of this. This will be different types of meadow grasses that can stand to be inundated with stormwater. There will be plants. I mentioned the word phytoremediation earlier. Basically phytoremediation, phyto, plant, mediate, remove evil. Plants used to clean up heavy metals that may be coming off your parking lot water, things like that. And we actually specified plants that do take heavy metals out of stormwater. So it's going to be rather aesthetic and naturalistic in appearance, but it will be like an earthen dike. And
I guess I'm wondering, do we need to fence that off? Will the baseballs get, are they going to foul balls go in there, or get stuck in something? Very safety issues when you worry about that.
yeah, the meadow grass, just the nature of the vegetation will deter people from naturally wanting to walk up through and in there. I believe we do have a fence around it. If someone wants to get in there, they're going to get in there.
I'm just wondering if this is a safety thing we need to prepare for ahead of time, or if it's something that is not kind of the other right way. We might be thinking too of that as a
The fence would be 4 foot high. Well, but someone could go over it with intent. Go ahead.
And the D areas,
Yeah.
previous plans, it seemed the D areas they were both.
Yeah.
When we removed this one on one side, what was the reason for that?
Okay, very good reasoning. Previous plans had 2 red D areas, meaning this one's now synthetic turf. Initially, we had this D area, and within it, we had some shot put opportunities, some of the horizontal jump opportunities. We had the pole vault here. We were squeezing as much function into space as possible. And we've done that successfully on other school district projects. The reaction to that by the athletic department was, look, we have a very successful track and field program. We have middle school and senior high school, both girls and boys. We have good numbers. We would like, if at all possible, to open this up a little more for more training space, not have kids on top of one another, increase the safety of the facility by having a little more spread out, and that left us with that. Well, if we're going to do this and this and this here, you don't need to have that then as polyurethane. You want it then to be less expensive, polyethylene. In other words, not red but green.
Why is the other D not?
The other D, yeah, good question. The other D is used for high jump. And also, staging area for kids to exercise and warm up. But high jump, yeah, sometimes the least area we use for high jump, we really don't advocate the small rectangle that was popular in the 1960s and 70s design, when kids were doing more Western roll type jumping for high jump, as opposed to now where they're doing semicircular run-ups for the Fosbury flop. So you really need a significant area for high jump alone, but it can also be an area where if it rained earlier in the day and the turf might be a little moist, even though it's all weather turf, kids could warm up and as a team on the D area.
Second question I had, the ball control systems.
Yes.
Are they able to be added later on? Say the stadium is built, and is that able to be added?
Answer is yes. It would be easier to do the type of ball control system here as an add-on. We would add it on the outside of the fence as opposed to the inside of the fence because of the turf. Here it's tougher. Here it's easier to do it before you lay the turf because there's little concrete footings and sleeves. Doesn't mean you can't do it after the turf's down, but you're going to pay a premium for now pulling back the turf, and that, yeah, it's, if you were to pick one to do, if you had to pick one, depending on numbers and priorities, I would say I would definitely do this one when the turf is going down. You could always do this one later. Yeah.
Speaking of priorities, I don't know if you answered this or Dr. Zerbe, but you said that these alternates were done in no specific order. Has the athletic department prioritized that?
Well, the athletic department only has contributed to the development of a handful of each column. The school and the community and possibly even the township, depending on how conditional use hearings go, are contributing to the development of everything else. We, and some Architerra, just from our experience of 75 of these projects, tried to build in the best flexibility and value for you to give you the best opportunity of decision making. So the ones, try to answer your question, the ones that the athletic department has weighed in on, but I haven't heard a priority from anyone on any of these.
I just was curious that if we would have to decide to prioritize, I want to make sure that we take what we really need.
Well, here would be the next step. Here's usually what would occur. If you did vote in the near future to put this project out to public bid, and bids were to come in the third week of February, within that first week, I would want to meet, I want a couple of days to analyze the bids, but within that first week, as the school's also analyzing the bids, I would want to meet with a core group, a smaller group, to say, all right, here's where we're at. Now we got to start prioritizing how much money are you really going to allocate to the project under the initial budget, over the initial budget, on the initial, things like that. And I think so that within 10 days of receiving the bids, those internal discussions are occurring, and with the idea that in 3 to 4 weeks after receiving the bids, the board is going to be in a position to render some sort of decision on what the project's going to be. Yeah. Sir?
Just two quick questions on the base bid. The bathroom is a requirement?
Right now, you don't meet code. No one has said that to us. The project we inherited 26 months ago did have some sort of a bathroom component, smaller in scale, but once we were engaged, we analyzed a lot of things, ADA. It was a recommendation through many of the 17 scenarios that we had presented. that a restroom facility would be useful because not just during public events where there's spectators, but day-to-day practice out in this area. Some of your student athletes or coaches may need to use facilities. And rather than try to get in as far into the locker room or bathroom, this could be a little bit of a closer relief. So no one is making us do this. And as far as I know, no one has, from an official capacity, said that, gee, you know, your number of units don't really add up to code per your number of seats, maybe because you're grandfathered in. But it was an element that gained momentum.
Same question for the perimeter fence.
Okay. The perimeter fence right now is galvanized. Here it's pretty much at the same location as the new fence, but from about this point on, we're moving the fence further out. And the perimeter fence, we thought from an aesthetic and just as an upgrade, not for aesthetics, but structural integrity and things, it's time to move beyond the galvanized and go with a new chain link fence, black vinyl coated. It just gives a fresher look to the whole thing. But it's the perimeter fence, it's the 8-footer, not the little 4-footer that's on the outside of the track.
Is it something that's required?
No.
Yeah, what's its purpose? I don't like fences myself, but what's its purpose?
I'll be honest with you, I don't either. It's to control the venue. It's to keep, for example, cars off the track. It's to keep cars, well, to help keep cars or people off the track and or synthetic turf field. Now, I understand if someone wants to get in there bad enough, they're either going to cut their way through it or they're going up and over. But it's a deterrent. I think, too, you know, when you charge ticket price for, say, a football game or whatever, you have certain control points, gateways. This is another way to control that, access to the venue. You're welcome. Joyce?
I got a couple of questions. The first is on the downgrade on the new track surface. So the track surface that you have in the base bid, is that top of the line?
Well, top of the line for high school and Division III or Division II college. In other words, it's called a sandwich. I debated whether or not to bring a sample, and I didn't, and I apologize. But it's squeegeed on to the surface with 3 different coatings of polyurethane, as opposed to a downgrade, which might be $10 a square yard cheaper, where that is sprayed on. So you get, with the squeegee application, the reason it's a little bit of a better surface and a little more expensive surface is you're getting more polyurethane down into the nooks and crannies of the black rubber granule that makes up the subbase of the track.
But if we, well, are there many different grades that we can look at, or is there just a good and a bad, or a good and a bad?
We're looking at the 2 most common for high school, and that includes, right now, we're specifying the identical surface to where your district championships in track and field are held, I believe, at Coatesville. And that's base bid tracks, same surface. Shippensburg, where state championships are, that's a sandwich system. That's base bid. Structural spray, I'm trying to think who has a structural spray in the region. I don't know. But we went with, we wanted it as an option. just in case. Go down. And
When you talked about the ball control ready for the stadium field, you told us who it would protect.
yeah.
But on the auxiliary field, who or what would be protected from a flood?
Yeah. That's a good question, because honestly, I didn't have ball control netting in either project when I presented it to the school. So, but I was convinced it's worth an alternate. And in the case of the stadium, which I won't waste any more time talking about it, there may be two different types of sports using the venue at the same time. At the auxiliary field, the scenario that was presented to me is that some of the grade, and including the parking lot, is at a higher elevation than the auxiliary field. So that lacrosse balls, and I've seen some ricochet field hockey balls, and of course some soccer balls, do go over an 8-foot-high fence. And there could be spectators sitting on the grassy embankment here who could be at risk. There could be softball players over here. There could be cars in certain areas that could be at risk of an errant ball. They could. They're both spring sports.
That's all I have.
Okay, you're welcome. Another, yes?
Yeah, I just had a question, I guess, about, I think it's a big question maybe, but about materials, when we talk about different levels. I mean, I'm sure that there's different grades of the actual turf, there's different construction materials that you might use on your restroom, for example. Do we specify all that?
Yes.
Our bid?
Yes, absolutely.
So there's some play that you want to downgrade.
Where we specifically say there's play to downgrade, yes. You bet. Yes?
I know we're going to have a timeline in the future.
Yeah.
But do you have a sense of the amount of time it will take for construction? And can some of the construction be done at the same time as others?
Yes, I do. Timeline would be if you were to authorize bidding to occur in the immediate future, we'd go out to bid immediately. For example, if you decided tonight to go out to bid, we would place the first of 3 consecutive weekly ads this Friday and get the bid process rolling. I will tell you, time is of the essence. That means, contract bids would be due. February 19th, 2 o'clock, as I said, third week, February, with potential award of a contract by the school board at their March 18th meeting, or if they met for other reasons sooner, could occur sooner. Construction would start, if you awarded March 18th, we'd want to start construction as soon as possible, but I wrote down hypothetically April 1. And what would need to be constructed from April 1 to May 12th would be the non-athletic use areas for spring sports. In other words, we would build what we call phase 1 of base bid. We would build the stormwater management. We would do that anyway on any given job. We would put in all the erosion and sedimentation control. We would put in all the perimeter fencing that keeps non-constructors out of construction areas. We would do stormwater management improvements campus-wide that are between an athletic field that might be used in the spring and 2 softball fields that might be used in the spring, and do all of that from April 1st to, say, May 12th. May 12th being close to the point in time when most of your sports that are using the track for districts or states or using a field are frankly done around that time with their dual meet or competitive season. And in working preliminarily with the athletic department, they thought in concept May 12th could be a great time to turn it over for then phase 2, assuming graduation may not be happening here, but at another venue, perhaps elsewhere on campus or off campus. So it's conceivable phase 2 work, which would then be like May 12th, could begin on this field if this field was part of the project, or this field if this field were part of the project, and depending on the circumstances with that mid-June event called commencement, we're either holding off on this one or we're moving into this area. Then we're calling for construction to be substantially complete 19 weeks later, from April 1 to August 8th. Because the Monday, I think August 8th is a Friday or a Saturday. The following Monday is when PIAA allows fall sports to practice officially on the fields. So we want substantial completion to occur prior to that. Now, that 19-week window from April 1 to August 8th should be enough time to do that, if that is your authorization. But things have to work like clockwork. You may have asked, could things be building simultaneously? Has to be. Has to be. You know, a turf crew might be working here, and the minute a turf crew's done here, it's going here. But while they're stoning this, they're finishing subgrade for this. So stone here, then stone there. Turf here, then turf there. It's all staggered depending on availability. Topsoil is being stripped from here and going right to here to help build these fields, because we're going to have a surplus of topsoil. And then finally, there's a term in construction, after substantial completion, we develop a punch list. Punch list is outstanding work tasks that still remain to be fulfilled. That would occur from August 8th to September 9th. In other words, you could start using the facility for its intended use August 8th. Some of the little minor details, there might be a scratch on a fascia of the restroom or something like that needs to be there. Little things get dealt with in the following 4 weeks, and then project completion would occur.
So you said 19 weeks.
From April 1 to August 8th is 19 weeks.
You're confident that it can be done?
I'm confident it can be done for that time. There's not a lot of slack. There's, normal weather, yes, but we got to make sure that the contractor, it's public bid, and we do have qualifications in there that potential bidders must demonstrate they've done, including at least 5 of these types of projects in the last 7 years. So we want someone who's been around the block a few times on these projects, eligible to bid these projects, and then we got to make sure it keeps going like clockwork. Yes, sir.
This may be a question for Frank. If we do accept the public bid, what are the legal implications? Are we obliged to accept one of them, for example?
No, from a legal standpoint, we're not required to accept one. If you put something out for public bid and they all come in and let's say they're over the numbers that you would normally want to accept, we can reject all the various bids and rebid the project, or not rebid the project as you determine. From a practical standpoint, you're going to have to work that out a little bit and consider it a little bit with respect to the time parameters that Dave was speaking of, because obviously 19 weeks from the 1st of April to the 8th of August, it's still 19 weeks regardless of how long it takes to start the bidding process. So, yeah, from a legal standpoint, you're fine.
Any other comments? I think I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Zerbe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. As you can see, even with David's presentation here this evening, his thoroughness has been quite important through this whole process. In my opinion, he's spent, even significant more time with our athletic advisory committees and with myself as well to go over the details and the rest of our administration, including our facilities engineer, business manager, assistant to the superintendent, and so forth. So I just want to make mention that, again, David has done a very thorough job in not only providing the ability for us to have a game-changing opportunity here for the Methacton students tomorrow, but well into the future, but also have facilities that present the image not only that we have in our academic accomplishments, but also now in our athletic accomplishments. And certainly present some facilities that provide not only the playability, but the safety needed, both structurally and availability-wise, as mentioned here in his presentation. So I just want to thank him for his thoroughness this evening. I want to talk about the next possibility, because this is really tied into this whole process. So when we talk about my first presentation, the capital projects, we talked about the kind of the first part of the second presentation of the field project, the timeline and the slides that David Horn went over from Architera. It brings us to the third part of this whole overall discussion when we talk about the capital campaign. You may have seen this slide earlier in my presentation on the capital projects, but in all seriousness, a capital campaign, no matter how it's led, it is established through a vision. That vision is an opportunity for us as a board, as an administration, as a public, to move this district in directions that are both advantageous to our students and responsible to our taxpayers. So I just want you to be aware that we'll be coming to you, I'll be coming to you in the very near future as I continue to gather data, move forward with putting my survey out into the community to gather some information and be able to present you that vision for the future to help perpetuate the capital campaign. With doing so, I also talked in the last presentation about creating a long-term perpetual funding, a giving opportunity for all. So when I talk about all, I don't mean, let's just go out and talk to big corporate donors who, certainly are of interest to us. But we want to make sure that there's opportunities from corporate donors all the way down to students themselves, to their parents, to the people that use our fields on a regular basis, to those alumni that have been lived through the facilities that we have, and now will respect and appreciate the opportunities that we've afforded them. So I think it's important to create that long-term and ongoing funding opportunity for all. And lastly, on this side, we need to talk about creating that atmosphere of community and providing an opportunity for everyone to participate. If you take a look at my next slide, you'll notice that in this slide, I'm talking about the capital campaign structure. And I'm going to tell you first off that I am not an expert fundraiser. I've had my experiences with that, as probably many of you have, not only in this audience this evening, but as well from the board. But I can tell you that really, when we talk about establishing the vision for the future and running a capital campaign, no matter if we, we run it internally within the administration, we hire some outside consultants, or we reach out to leaders within our community to be our leadership group. It really boils down to many of these groups being a part of that team. And certainly the superintendent and myself, our school board, you as our 9 members, the Methacton Education Foundation, Mark, I think you're here this evening as president of that. Our athletic and activities booster clubs play a tremendous role in this process and have played a tremendous role over the years as actively raising funds for their particular sports. But now we can engage them in a much larger opportunity to help us make this a reality. In addition, we need, and I know as Mark and the foundation have tried and as initially started, to reach out to our alumni to get their support and their recognition as well as others to help perpetuate this process. So here are some preliminary campaign considerations that I think the board needs to consider at this point in time. And I believe that with some further research and some further dialogue with those members in the previous slides, the board, the foundation, etc., we need to identify and establish a campaign leadership team. It could be, like I said, including those members from the previous slide, as well as others within the community. But I think it's important that we as a board establish who is going to lead the capital campaign project. I believe we need to have a recommendation, we need to get it to a vote. And if it's the foundation, it's the foundation. If it's another group or an outside entity or a group of leaders within the community, then it should be recognized and we should move forward with that process. We also need to identify the campaign structure. Who are the core entities? What are their roles and what are their goals in the process of the fundraising opportunity? Additionally, we need to develop a case statement. We need to be able to communicate the vision, and we need to establish the image of this giving opportunity. We need to establish and develop the gift tables and timelines. You know, what are the expectations? How, as a board, do we expect to be able to, establish the giving opportunities in line with the needs and the spending that's occurring as the project's developing over time. And certainly, once the leadership team is developed, we need to make sure that all individuals partaking in that process are trained and well positioned to send a consistent message. We need to identify the prospects. Who are our major donors? What are the types of activities that we need to generate enthusiasm and excitement about the project? And lastly, but not least, we need to monitor those activities. We need to revise when necessary. And we need to certainly keep the board informed as well as the public informed about the process that we're continuing with. Those are just some things that I think in the very near future, the board's going to need to consider. So when we look at timeline, we're looking into the future. David Horn had mentioned a few of these, so I'll jump real quickly to some of the things. Certainly, we're looking on the 21st to look at bond financing. We're bringing back bond counsel to review the presentation that was previously provided to the Finance Committee on December 3rd. As well as we know that we have some additional conditional use hearings. We are hopeful that they continue and we hopefully that they are in our favor. Certainly our bid documents are prepared to deal with those decisions. And certainly we have a bid due date, bid award date, and we talk generally about the construction, and hopefully, even after the punch list is done, David, we would be theoretically done sometime in early September. So I think before I send you back to your seats or give you opportunity to ask me any additional questions, I just want to say that today, even though for the past 20 years this has been in some fashion or another part of the mindset or dialogue within the Methacton community, I want you to know that this is really the first step in finding out where we stand and how we can best move this project forward to provide some excellent opportunities for our students and start a perpetual process and establish this vision for the future. So are there any questions from the board at this moment? All right, and that ends our presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Dr. Zerby, David, and Stuart. Appreciate the hard work in the presentation. Now we'll move on to item number 6, public comment on board action items. Are there any public comments? John? I'm going to ask Angela to let me know when you get close to 2 minutes.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Is it sacrosanct that the public gets 2 minutes? And how many of the public are here? Mr. Nascimento, you are irritating your taxpayers big time. You don't have to irritate your taxpayers. In October of 2011, directors approved the Fields project with a sum of $3.5 million for an anticipated price. The project detail, I guess, was an early concept that was forwarded to Architectura for further effort. Now it's 2014 and a bid package is ready. But are we ready? What is the needs prioritization apart from the athletic department's wants? Can any other school or public fields carry some of the burden apart from golf courses? What is the funding plan? I think there's some big rough edges between saying you're going to borrow $5.5 million and then you're going to have an unspecified goal for a capital campaign in the future. I think there's some big rough edges there. Relative to sports, since 2011, we've come a long way on recognizing the lifelong ills of concussions. There was an article in the Inquirer today about the NFL agreements totaling hundreds of millions of dollars that are still tentative. And the ills of concussions from Little League to the NFL. Some predict the demise of football rather than the early demise of some of its players. Back to the funding issue. Locally, we're still in year 6 of recession that ended nationally in 2009. Pennsylvania is in tough times with the most recent population growth of 0.1% per year versus the national average that's 7 times higher. Births in Lower Providence were only 280 in 2012, the lowest in 25 years, versus 380 in the year 2000. New home building is almost non-existent. Home resales are slack. Home prices are down. Foreclosures continue at a good pace, and demand for family housing is low. I don't have local employment stats, but news out of the largest local employer, Merck, is ominous, even after 6,000 layoffs. Methacton is not the locale of choice for those working in Philadelphia due to commuting costs. You may be flush yourselves.
John, can you start to wrap up?
Yes, I can. Thank you. You may be flush yourselves, but there's much evidence overall that the median Methacton family is suffering, and you need to be considerate of your taxpayers along with your students. I say go slowly on the Fields project, and I think there's some question about football. Maybe the base project should be the auxiliary field with the football field scheduled for a year later. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Ron Evans, Worcester Township. The gentleman behind me that gave you the presentation, I've heard this quite a few times. I'm sure most of you have heard it many times too, because I didn't really learn anything more tonight than I did the first time that he gave it. This project started with the football lights 20 years ago. Now, the gentleman told me that we're 90% there to having this thing completed. That means that we have 10% left, and 10% of 20 years is 2 years. You gentlemen and ladies, you have to go to the township with all this information. Is that correct? If you vote on it tonight to go ahead with this project, give this man the okay to do it, can you start without seeing the supervisors?
In order to complete the light portion of the project, we need the conditional use approval. In order to make the changes to the fields that we've anticipated in the building of the fields, we need the land development approval. So the answer is yes, we do need the township's approvals with respect to those items. But as you know, or as you may know, we've bifurcated the process, so the lights are now separately considered from the issue of the building of the fields. It doesn't mean we're not going to pursue both of them, that's up to the board, but the issue as far as moving forward with the approval process, we were able to get our land development approval and then get our light approval subsequent to that.
That means you can start breaking ground right away?
The schedule that David mentioned in his presentation is what our target is and what we're looking to do. Yes, sir.
But you can't do that without the supervisors approving it. As soon as you if you take the information that was presented here tonight, give that to the supervisors, they're not going to say go ahead. They're going to say, well, wait a minute now, we got to go over this and go over that. It just seems that there's one thing after another. The lights were the only thing that was started over 20 years ago by me. I was the one that presented it to the board. All I wanted was football lights. Friday night, football lights. Saturday is college, Sunday is professional. That's the way most every school district that I know and every state in the United States has it that way, except Methacton High School. 10 years ago, or 15, whenever I brought it up, there was only one school that did not have lights. Two schools, Cheltenham and Worcester. Cheltenham does have lights. Worcester still doesn't, after fighting up there for 20 years. If it took me 20 years to get a problem solved like this, I don't know what you people were doing over there. I said it before that you were, maybe I shouldn't say it, but I said it before that you get off your seats because you're sitting on your brains. But
All right.
that's,
Thank you.
I know that's a little bit.
You're at your 2 minutes.
Okay, well, give me another 10 seconds. I gave you 20 years, you can give me 2 minutes. Please, but okay tonight, start. This guy has put in so many football fields. We don't need all the architects and all the lighting people that John Harris brings up and stuff. This guy knows what he's doing. He's done many a school before. And if it's not done the way we want it, I'm sure he'll fix it. I got great confidence in that guy, and I don't know him from Adam. But please, tell him to go ahead, get the thing going, and let's get the first football game this October with me pulling the lights. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Was there another? Oh, okay. Sure, come on up. Sorry, I didn't see. I was thinking about Friday Night Lights.
Hi, Lois Byrne, Lower Providence. I just had a couple questions. So the timeline for starting obviously is very tight with a 19-week construction window. If we can't start construction by April 1st, what's the implications?
What are your other questions? Let's just get them all out.
And then if there is overruns, because lots of projects run into different issues, so if it does take greater than the 19 weeks, what's the plan B for starting practice for the athletic teams on August 8th?
I can answer that. That's okay. I think back to your first question, if I can just respond to that. Certainly, there's an impact of us not starting in April, and means that we wouldn't get done until later. And then that's seriously the problem, and that's the obvious one. So that impacts us greatly into those fall seasons. But in regards to the timeline of the construction and its impact on any of the sports that use those fields over that period of construction, we're currently working with our athletic director to find alternative practice facilities to utilize in the interim while those fields are being prepared for your use. And I think David Horn had mentioned earlier that there's a difference between being completed September 9th and being conditionally completed. And so that means that the fields are available to be used prior to their full completion, and that means they're available for safe use. They just may not have all the bells and whistles done with and the punch list completed.
Right, okay. And then the other question I had is, for that one stormwater basin, the largest one, with the vegetation that's put in there, what's the effect with, like, bugs? So it looks like with a lot of vegetation and growth there could be a large propensity to have bugs there. Is that?
We're going to defer that to David Horn. David, would you mind responding to that for us, please?
Sure. Mosquitoes?
Yeah.
The stormwater management basin is designed so that standing water would not, by state BMP requirements, standing water would not be present more than 72 hours. So right there, the mosquito breeding habitat should not be present. Plus, we're planting every inch of that basin bottom with vegetation of some form, which also will absorb water. That's part of the whole nature of trying to clean the water and absorb water and get it back into the ecosystem. Plus, there's other predators of bugs, birds being one very primary one. Rain gardens such as this, where we don't anticipate a significant amount of water for a prolonged period of time for the breeding of mosquitoes. I sense that was the bug you were most concerned about. Okay. So I don't think that one will be an issue. Other types of bugs that are out there are types of harmless bugs other than bees that may sting you.
Okay.
Can't really.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on board action items? Okay, seeing none, we will move into items for board action. Dr. Zerbe.
We're asking for the approval of 7.1 in the administrative employment to approve the temporary employment of Michael Murphy, Interim Director of Pupil Services. This is a replacement position, a compensation of $527 per day, effective January 6th through March 14th, 2014. President, do we want to take these one by one, or do we want to take them all as?
Let's take them one by one.
Okay, so do we want to vote on 7.1?
Yeah, so is there a motion to approve the temporary employment of Michael Murphy as Interim Director of Pupil Services? Kim, second. Joyce? Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Okay.
Item 7.2, Fields Project bids. I am asking you to approve the authorization for the administration to solicit bids for the athletic field project at Methacton High School campus.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the administration, to authorize the administration to solicit bids for the athletic field project? Mr. Phillips, is there a second? Mr. Roth, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous?
Item 7.3, field trips. Approve the field trip for the Methacton High School Grade 12 choral at the Neshaminy High School in Langhorne, January 9th through the 11th. Cost to the district, substitutes. And approve the field trip for the Methacton High School Girls Winter Track at Penn State University, January 24th and 25th, 2014. Cost to the district, substitutes.
Can I have a motion to approve both field trips? Brenda, is there a second? Kathleen? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous?
And you'll do
I'll do it again. Okay, I'll take it, handles items 7.4 and 7.5. 7.4, North Monco Technical Career Center representative. We need to fill the vacancy on the board of the VOTEC. Can I have a nomination for a representative to complete the term ending December 2015?
I'd like to nominate Jim Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
So, motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor of Jim Phillips? Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you all.
Item number 7.5, PSBA Legislative Liaison. I'll ask for a nomination for an appointment for the PSBA Legislative Liaison for 1 year.
I'd like to nominate Joyce Petroskas.
Is there a second? Second. Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion?
I have a comment. This is a very visible position, and I do not feel that Joyce Petroskas is qualified to represent this board due to her personal issues and problems that have been going on this year. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Joyce.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other items for board action?
No other items from my perspective.
Okay. Item number 8, board committee assignments. We'll get that posted on the website and entered into the record.
Yep.
Okay. Item number 9, courtesy of the floor.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask a question about the new board assignments. It looks like you're going to be changing the financial committee to, I guess, be not of the whole anymore.
Well,
So what's the structure going to be?
Well, the Finance Committee will be the Finance Committee. Joyce will chair. It'll be the committee just as there always was. But what we've done in the recent past is have it as a committee of the whole. And what we're going to do is move away from that and have an actual working committee. And then the committee will work through things with Stuart and Dr. Derby and then bring things back to the board as a whole. So rather than having the entire board serve as the Finance Committee, it'll actually just be the actual Finance Committee. Because there's always been a committee that's been appointed. It's been a Finance Committee. And then we've always included, well, not always, we've included the entire board as a committee of the whole, and we're going to move away from that.
I guess my concern is this going to be considered an open meeting then to the public? Or is this a
It's open to the
closed
public.
meeting?
Sure, yeah. All committee meetings are open to the public, so, under the Sunshine Law. So the public is welcome to come and attend and participate to the extent that they can. It's just that it will be a committee meeting rather than a board. The meeting will be the committee rather than the board as a whole.
Okay, well, I guess I'd just like to voice my concern. I would think that the Finance Committee should be the one committee that should be of the whole. I mean, we talk about the budget. This is a significant role we're charged with. I guess I'm just wondering why it was switched, that's all.
So it previously had been just worked as a committee, and then it's gone back and forth over the past year or two I think definitely over the past 2 years, it's been a committee as a whole. The thought behind this was that we would give the committee flexibility to work through items before bringing it to the entire board.
Now, it being a public meeting, though, if a board member would like to attend this meeting, they're more than welcome to attend those meetings, okay? It's always been like that, and I think that was put into a committee as a whole back in, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and that's because there were so many different things going on. It was just better that, because things were so fluid and moving so quickly, that the whole board needed to be updated simultaneously. So I think it was better back then that president had it as a whole.
Okay, well, I guess considering what you just said, that's exactly why I think it should be of the whole. I mean, I'm just putting it out there that that's my opinion. Obviously it's, I guess, happened. I don't know if we have a say in it or not, but I guess I just think that the Finance Committee should be of the whole. I think we all should be appraised of everything, as well as just the 3 people that are on it.
Okay.
Anything else before we go to courtesy of the floor? Okay, John?
John Andrews, Lower Providence. We've had a lot of discussion this evening relative to the Fields project, and I alluded to some rough edges on the timing. I think, the nominal price of this, doing the whole shebang, is $5.5 million now. Or at least the seeking of a bond issue is for $5.5 million. At the high school, in addition to the Fields work, the 5-year plan calls for something over $600,000. So, I think the board very quickly needs to put forward to the community a goal of perhaps $3 million for donations. I think so. I think that you can bat around the feasibility of that. I think that's a good number. Certainly, it's off the top of my head, but I think where the median family in the district is suffering in a continuing recession, there's a distribution, and then there are people at the high end. Maybe teachers would want to put in $2,000 apiece, or at least high school teachers. I mean, don't be shy on putting together a plan. Forgetting the past where Dr. Quinn said we had deplorable fields, that's of our own doing. But, looking to the future, I think that in the sports area, we have we want the best facilities. So, let's go out and ask for big donations, and if we meet them, that'll add a lot to the pride. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Mary Jane?
Mary Jane Barbone, Lower Providence. Thank you for the presentation tonight. It was very, very well done. What I didn't hear really, I heard from Dr. Zerbe that he's looking to get direction from the board as to what the capital campaign committee should look like, and I didn't hear a timeline on the school board. Like, what is the board's timeline on determining that? I know we kind of have a capital campaign subcommittee of the Education Foundation. Not really sure where we stand in that and when we would get a decision as to what you plan on doing. Thanks.
So I'll let Dr. Zerbe comment on that. One thing I would say is that he's gathering information. He's going to make some proposals and presentations to us further to that, so we'll make some decisions at that point, but go ahead if you want to.
Yeah, I think just in the recent hours, we're trying to reach out to the board president from the foundation to try to schedule a meeting. And I think that, as I mentioned earlier, it's really going to take a coordinated effort. It's just not going to be done by one organization. I mean, and John, you had mentioned, a goal. I mean, there's so many things that we need to do related to the capital campaign, but it really takes a leadership team to put those things in place and to make those recommendations to the board. Certainly, those are things that will be coming fast and furiously to the board in the very near future. But again, the most important part of this is establishing the commitment by the school district to put a field project forward so that we can provide the necessary image and part of the visionary structure to make our case statements. And those case statements are the reasons why somebody, whether it's large donors who would donate $3 million or donate $10 at any level and from any group, to help perpetuate the long-term success of this initiative.
Thanks, Dr. Zerbe. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor?
Mark Constable, Worcester Township. I just want to thank the board for taking that project to the next step. I think going along with what Art said and what Ron said, the thing that holds us together is that community now has something really concrete to sink their teeth into. There's people sitting on the sidelines, I'm sure, no names specifically, but Mr. Mascara did something really great for the school district. You accepted that gift, and I think there are several people like him out there, but they needed to know where we were with the project. The Worcester Township supervisors, I think, will take this positively as well. I don't think they'll take it in an adversarial manner. I think they'll, knowing that there's the project's going out to bid. I can't say enough about Mr. Horn. Having heard about him before he got here, having had an opportunity to work with him to some extent, being involved in the process, I think you're making the right decision. And what Dr. Zerbe said, laying out a plan, getting a committee, the group together to use the excitement and use that energy to get this project going, I think will generate positive results. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Ron, go ahead.
The football field and all that goes along with it, I think in years to come, that will pay for itself by the people that attend it, the advertisement that we're going to get out of it, the signs that I notice they have signs up around the perimeter of a lot of them. But I'm sure that they're not for free, and I think that will bring in a lot of revenue. And I think, I don't know what they charge, $5 a ticket to get in or something like that. That'll bring in a lot of that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Kim, second. Jim, all those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.